Algebra 1, Unit 7C Study Guide, Quadratic Functions and Radicals. So this is part 2, looking at the second half of the problems. So now we're going to solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula, which is printed there for you on your study guide. The first thing you want to do when you're solving a quadratic using the formula is to pick out your values of a, b, and c. So you think about the standard form of a quadratic, which is, I'll write it for you and you can write it down, ax squared plus bx plus c. Try that again. Plus bx plus c. So our a value is 4, our b value is positive 8, and our c value is negative 1. So pick out those values and then plug them into the formula. So x equals the opposite of b, so negative 8 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that would be 8 squared minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is negative 1. All divided by 2 times a, which is 4. So now let's simplify. And we'll start with the square root. So we'll have 64, and that will end up being a positive 16. So 64 plus 16 is 80, all divided by 8. Now I'm going to simplify the square root of 80. So I'll go back here. And then I can break that down into, let's think of the biggest, 16. 16 and 5. So the square root of 16 is 4, and then we have the square root of 5 left. All divided by 8. Now the very last thing is to see if we have a common factor. And I do between my three terms. So I can divide my first negative 8 by 2, which will give me, by 4, which will give me negative 2. This will by 4 is 1, and by 4 here is 2. So our final answer is negative 2 plus or minus 1, but I don't need to write that 1, times the square root of 5, all divided by 2. Alright, let's try another. So we're solving x squared minus 5x minus 3 using the quadratic formula. So let's pick out a, b, and c. So the understood number in front of x squared is 1, our b value is negative 5, and our c value is negative 3. So plugging those into the formula, we have x equals the opposite of b, so that would be positive 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 5 squared minus 4 times our a value, which is 1, times c, which is negative 3, all divided by 2 times 1. Alright, so now let's start under that square root. So that'll give us 25 plus 12, which is 37. And then our denominator is 2. Now, 37 cannot be broken down, simplified at all. I don't have any number that I can divide out in all three places, so that's our final answer. 5 plus or minus the square root of 37, all divided by 2. Now for our last set of problems, we're going to complete the square from concept 43. So you might want to get your notes out to help you with that. So the first thing we want to do in completing the square is that we want to move away this c value to the other side and give ourselves some space to complete the square. So we're going to take the b value, which is 2, and we're going to divide it by 2 and then square it. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 squared equals 1. So that's my value that will complete the square. So I'm going to write it in red. And then whatever we add to one side of the equation, we need to add to the other. Now you can factor what's on the left. And so that will factor as x plus 1, quantities squared. Because two numbers that'll multiply to give me 1 and add to give me 2 are 1. And then on the right side I'll have 25. Now you can take the square root of each side, so that you'll have x plus 1 equaling positive and negative 5. Now to solve for x, you need to subtract your 1 from both of those numbers. So positive 5 minus 1 is positive 4. Negative 5 minus 1 is negative 6. So our two solutions for that first problem are 4 and 6. So let's try another. We just got to get used to this process. So we're going to move our 15 over. We're going to subtract it. So that would be negative 15. And then we'll take half of the b value and square it. So that'll be negative 4 squared, or positive 16. Now I'm adding the number in red to complete the square, and then whatever I add to the left side I have to also add to the right side. When I factor that, my two numbers that I want to multiply together to give me 16 and combine to give me negative 8 are negative 4 and negative 4, or x minus 4 squared. Negative 15 plus 16 is positive 1. So now you can take the square root of both sides. So that will be plus or minus 1. Last step is add the 4 to both of those numbers. So 1 plus 4 is 5. Negative 1 plus 4 is 3. Sometimes you'll have a problem where the c value is already moved over, like in this next problem. So let's just complete the square. So we'll have 18, that's our b value, divided by 2, and then squared. So 18 divided by 2 is 9. 9 squared is 81. So we're going to add that to both sides. So we'll add 81 and add 81. And that number completes our square on the left side, because now we can take x plus 9 and square it. And then on the right side, negative 56 plus, 81 is 25. Take the square root of both sides. So x plus 9 will equal positive and negative 5. So just subtract your 9 from both sides. So x equals 5 minus 9, which is negative 4. Negative 5 minus 9, which is negative 14. All right, last problem. So our c value is already moved over, so now let's just complete the square. Take negative 6 divided by 2 and square it. So that'll give us negative 3 squared, which is 9. So x squared minus 6x. And then let's complete the square by adding 9 to both sides. And then we can factor. So x minus 3 squared on the left, and then 55 plus 9 is 64. So we'll take the square root of both sides. X minus 3 equals plus or minus 8. Then let's add the 3 to both sides. So x equals 11. So 8 plus 3 is 11. Negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5. All right, that concludes the study guide problems for Unit 7C. Good luck on your test.